ever wanted to swap materials in Blender automatically so you can render your product in multiple material variations? Then this tutorial is for you. We'll develop a geometry nodes node group that will allow us to render not only one material per frame, but also to cycle through material slots and to hold materials for a certain number of frames. We'll have a look at a real-world example of a chair where we have 3 fabric materials for the cushions that we need to render cycling for each of the 2 wood materials for the legs and back. So let's dive in. So let's create an object to hold our material. We can choose a UV sphere, a torus, Suzanne. Let's choose Suzanne and let's apply a subdivision modifier and shade smooth like this. And now let's switch here to shading, and here in our material properties, as you can see, we don't have any material yet. So let's click on new and let's call this material red. Let's change the color to red. And the way we can create another material is by clicking X and create new. And we can now create the green. Let's just create like 5 materials for us to really see how this works. Let's set the red to 0, green 1 and blue 0. Let's click X, new. Let's create the blue version. 001 on the blue. And let's create a white material. Let's keep it like that as a default. And the new one, let's call it black. Let's just slide here down. And we've got here our 5 materials. So currently our materials are not being used by anything because they don't have a slot. And the way we can create slots is by clicking here on the plus sign. And so let's organize these materials here on these objects so we can make use of it. So let's click plus, 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 plus 4 times. Oops, mistake here. Let's switch here to red. So this is index 0. So all these slots, they always start at 0. This is index 1. So on index 1, let's use the green. Index 2, let's use the blue. Index 3, let's use the white. And index 4, let's use the black. So right now, if we want to switch the material, since that only the first one, index 0, is visible, we could come here and switch to whatever material we want. But this requires manual setup and this is not what we want. So let's move here to geometry nodes. Let's create a new geometry node setup. Let's call it material cycler. Let's add a set material index. Let's connect the geometry from the group input and then from the set material index to our group output. And let me just expand a little bit here. And as you can see, we are now seeing material index 0. And if you start cycling, we can see the exact material setup that we did here. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, like that. Now, what we need to do is to find a way for us to render each of these materials, and ideally 1 per frame. This will be the most effective way to do that. So let's search here for scene time. I already have here, and let's connect the frame to the material index. So right now, because here on our output options, our frame range starts at 1. And this is why it's showing the, let's go back here. It's showing the green material because it's index 1, not index 0. If we go back to 0, now we can see the red material. So let's just get some room here and let's add a math node. Let's change the operation to subtract and the value to 1. So now what we are doing is, okay, from the frame range here, which is 1, we subtract 1 and that will match 0. So 1 minus 1 is 0, which is our index that we are seeing right now, it's index 0. That's where we've got the red material. So now when we go to frame 2, we can see the green one. Frame 3, we can see the blue, the white, and the black. So with this setup, now if, let's say, we go here to our frame range and we set from 1 to 5, and we would render these, we would be rendering each material separately, so one material per frame. Although this setup works fine with a simple setup like this, it doesn't always work well in all situations. On the next section, let's see how we can add functionality to make this setup reusable for all kinds of situations that we need. So I went ahead and built this scene for us to work on. And this is a very simple scene. It's just a chair, a camera, you've got an HDRI to illuminate the scene, and a plane here to catch the shadow. So if we switch to cycles, this is what we are getting. And right now, we've got two objects. So these cushions, the seat and the back cushion, they have 3 slots with 3 different materials, fabric 1, fabric 2, fabric 3. These are the shading networks, everything downloaded from Blender Kit. If you want to play around, you can follow along. And the wood parts, we've got just 2 material slots and 2 wood different materials here. But right now, we cannot really cycle through them unless we do it manually, like in here. And that's not what we want. So let's choose here the seat cushion. Let's go to the geometry nodes workspace. There are several ways we can add a geometry nodes setup. It's either by clicking new or clicking here on add modifier and geometry nodes, because we always need to have a geometry nodes modifier to be able to have a node group associated to that object. So usually the way I like to do is the first object, I use the new button here on the geometry node editor. So I click new. As you can see, at the same time created a geometry node modifier and a new node group. So let's call this node group material cycler. And let's redo our setup very easily so we can build some muscle memory. Let's add a math, a set material index, and a scene time. These are the very least we need to make this work. So let's connect geometry to geometry, like such. As you can see, it's already forcing to use the material index 0. Let's connect frame to value and value to the material index. And let's change to subtract. And for the value, let's use 1. If you look at the seat cushion and we cycle, so frame 1, 2, and 3, it's cycling through these materials here. Now we want to do the same for the other pieces, and we have several ways to do that. The best way is if we click on an object without a geometry node modifier, we have 2 ways. We can either click here on new, or we can come to the modifier, click add modifier, geometry nodes, and now here we can choose material cycler. This is the cleanest way of doing it, because if we, let's say, we go to this object and we click new, it will create another node group. That's why now we've got the second node group, and then we need to do some cleanup at the end. Let's actually select all of these objects here. And when we click add modifier, make sure to click Alt at the same time you click on geometry nodes. So it creates a geometry node for all of them at the same time. So now here, so this object already have the geometry nodes modifier, the same thing for the other ones. So now we just need to select the material cycler for all of these. And now it's great because if we cycle through these frames, so frame 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I set up 6 here because we've got 3 fabrics and 2 woods, and 3 times 2 is 6. But even though this is working, because yes, we are swapping the materials per frame, what I really want is to cycle through the fabric materials and use wood 1, and then cycle again and use wood 2. So for that, what we need to do is here, let's select the seed cushion. Let's make sure that we use a unique node group. It's not instanced. Let's rename these to fabric. And we want for this to cycle again. So for that, we will want another math node. Let's change the operation to wrap. Let's use the minimum at 0 and the max it's 3 because we've got 3 material index. So right now, if I click Alt and mouse wheel, as you can see, now it's cycling always through these 3 materials, which is great. This is what we want. Let's do the same for the seat for the back cushion. We just need to select this one. So now both of them are using the same setup. Great. But now we want the wood. Actually, first let's rename this material cycler wood. As you can see, this one is being used 4 times because we've got 4 wood objects using it. But now what we want is to retain these materials for 3 frames because we are using 3 different fabrics. So for that, we need to use another math node. And this time we are going to use divide. And here on the number, we put the number of frames we want to hold this material for. And in this case is 3 frames. So right now, if I cycle again, so 1, 2, 3, it cycles through all of the fabrics, retaining the wood 01. And now once we move to the 4th one, it's switched to the 2nd wood and it's cycling again through all the fabrics, which is great. This is exactly what we need. We could end the tutorial here, but what we want is to make this node setup reusable for the future for other objects. And that's what we're going to do in the next section. So as you noticed, both these node groups, they are slightly different because for the fabric, we've got a wrap that will tell us how many times we want to cycle. And for the wood, it has this divide node that tells us for how many frames we want to hold a material. So let's make one group that has all of them. So let's add here another math node. Let's change the operation to wrap. For the minimum, we put 0. For the max, just for demonstration, we put 3. Just to have a value right now. Now we want to expose these values for us to use here in our modifier. So let's start first with the wrap. The wrap, let's connect the max value to this output here from the group input. Let's click N to reveal here the group, and let's rename these materials to cycle. For the type, we'll use an integer, and the default should be 1. And the minimum is 0, and let's not worry about the maximum. So now, as you can see, we've got materials to cycle. We've got 0 because it was the default value. So let's change this to 1. We also need another one for the divide. And here on the value, we will connect this value here. And let's call it frames or hold frames. And we change to an integer as well. The default should be 1. The minimum should be 0. And we can also add the description here. So we can call it number of frames to hold a material. So if you hover your mouse here, it shows what you just showed. So this can be useful for later use. And let's actually do the same for the materials to cycle. Number of materials to cycle, like that. So if we hover, now we've got our tip there. So here, let's also switch to material cycler. Material cycler. So all of these, they have material cycler. Okay. So let's go to this one, materials to cycle 2, hold frames 3, and here the same. 2 materials, hold frames for 3, 2 materials, 3. Okay, so now this one, we've got 1, 1, and that's not what we want. If I want to set both at the same time, materials to cycle is 3, so I will click 3 and Alt and Enter at the same time. So now we've got 3 here and we've got 3 as well. So let's test and see if this is working well. Yeah, so the first 3 frames, so 1, 2, 3, cycling the fabrics, and then switch to the second wood and it's cycling through the fabric materials again. So this is great. This setup is working very well. So now, because we don't want to go through all of this setup the next time we want to cycle through materials, let's save this node group for later use. And for that, we just need to come here to the outliner and change the display mode to Blender file. Let's go to node groups and right click over our material cycler and mark as asset. We can save the file, and now with a new file. So we've got an empty file. Let's go to File, Append. Let's select our file. Let's go to Node Tree, Material Cycler. Let's go here to the outliner and change the display mode to Blender file. And here we've got our Material Cycler. So if we switch here the timeline to Asset Browser, we switch here to current file, click on Unassigned, and there we have our material cycler. You can also create a thumbnail for it. Let's do that. I will just get a thumbnail that I already created. So you've got the thumbnail. And let's just test this very quickly. Let's create a cube, doesn't matter. Let's go here to our material properties. Let's create a couple of slots. On the first one, I will just change to this color. Let's actually switch here so we can see it. Let's create another one. So 2 materials, 2 slots. Let's drag and drop these over our cube. Here we've got our material cycler setup. Materials to cycle. Let's switch to 2. And let's also switch back to our timeline. And now if we cycle, it's working. If we want to hold it for, let's say 3 frames. So 1, 2, 3. And then it keeps cycling and it holds for 3 frames. So this is a great way for us to reuse these every time we need, and we don't need to set up this node group every time we want to cycle through materials. If you found this tutorial helpful for you, please subscribe to the channel and give it a like. Thank you.